Hi there, it's Miriam, pain coach and mind body practitioner at Pain Outside the Box. And today my video is going to take a slightly different format. I wanted to make it a little bit more informal, also so that some of you can get to know what's going through my mind, what's going through my head as I go through this healing journey myself and as I lead and guide others out of chronic pain and symptoms. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. Especially, I wanted to share some things that make me a little bit sad. I mean, us human beings really don't have it easy, right? Since a young age, of course, we are born wanting love, wanting attachment. But the way that our society is structured, it's not that easy, because from a very young age we are taught what is expected of us, what's good behavior, what's not good behavior. We go through several shocks as we witness the adults in our lives, our caregivers, going through their own struggles, being unable to be there for us, of course, 24/7, even though we're very young and we do need 24/7 care from our mother, from our father. Of course, they have to go to work, they have to entrust us to other caregivers. We're not always in the right environment, in the right nurturing environment, and it's impossible to avoid certain upsets in childhood. It's impossible to avoid certain shocks, certain traumas. And trauma can be anything that is not expected, anything upsetting that the child doesn't quite expect, The child expects to be emotionally validated, to be supported, to be loved. So in a sense, any time that the child doesn't get what he or she expects from others, from the world, that is a shock. And that kind of shock, if it's not completely processed, it stays there in the body. It creates problems later on in life. It creates anxiety because the person would still be afraid of facing a similar situation. So what makes me sad, to go back to what makes me sad about all of this, is that, of course, we cannot avoid these shocks. They're gonna happen, even if we have the most caring parents on the planet, right? You can't completely protect a child from trauma. Not completely. You never know what's gonna happen. But what makes me sad is that, especially for people from my generation or older, there wasn't enough education. There still isn't, by the way, but there wasn't enough education about emotional validation, about how to support a child who is feeling upset or worried or anxious about something. I had the most caring parents and loving parents in the world, and I'm so grateful they're still with me today, and I love them so much. But of course, they had been brought up with a certain education, a certain background, and they weren't able to handle certain issues that I was having. So I would end up being told not to make a fuss, or, to be grateful because I had so many lovely things in my life, which was true. But what I'm pointing out here is a very common problem, that as kids we are taught and encouraged not to make a fuss, not to keep bringing up the same issue. If we're scared of something or upset about something, we're just told to just get over it. This is even worse with boys than with girls, right? They're told to man up, not to be a crybaby, to be a boy, to be a man. And this leads to what we call emotional invalidation. So the child grows up believing that his emotions are too much, they're not valid, they're wrong. And what happens is that the child starts to suppress and repress these kind of emotions each time they come up, each time there's a trigger. the child is unable to fully express what's going on because maybe the first time or the last time he's tried to explain this to a parent or to a caregiver, he wasn't validated, he felt misunderstood or even blamed for feeling that way. So what happens, especially as we grow older, is that we develop emotions of shame for feeling certain feelings, or guilt, or we completely repress certain emotions which we feel are inadequate. They are wrong because this is what society has told us, that these emotions are wrong. For some people, these emotions can be anger, displaying anger at the situation. They can be fear of something. They can be feeling vulnerable, all sorts of emotions which we associate as being negative emotions. We tend to repress depending on what we've been taught. For some people, it's sadness, for example. They've been brought up or taught that repressing sadness is the best option. And what happens later on in life is that these emotions remain totally repressed. So in the way that we deal with stressors and situations in the present day, we also repress these emotions, right? So anything that makes us sad, we try to distract ourselves with something else, with alcohol. We just tell ourselves to, never mind. We try to display this persona of, oh yeah, I'm cool anyway, it's not gonna upset me, without really taking the time to really feel how this trigger is really affecting us. So for some people, this happens on a daily basis, right? We are not able to stay with our feelings, to really feel our feelings. And if you really know anything about mind-body syndrome and TMS and chronic pain, you will know that these repressed emotions can be responsible for causing real physical pain in the body, and especially when they build up to a certain level, when the triggers around us, the stressors, are threatening us, are threatening these very emotions to surface, but we don't want these emotions to surface because we think they're unacceptable. We think that we are, over that, or we are not the kind of person to be an angry person or to be a sad person, because we've built this persona, this image of us being positive people, or of ourselves being strong people or confident people, or whatever image, whatever self-image, self-ideal you've built for yourself. So what happens is that at a certain point in our lives, we face a situation or an accumulation of factors that we find distressing, we find upsetting, and that they are triggering those emotions that we have repressed. Because the unconscious believes that these emotions are dangerous, because this is what we've been taught. We've been taught that these emotions are unacceptable on some level. So the program there is that these emotions are not acceptable and therefore they are dangerous. We shouldn't feel them. So the brain can create another distraction in the form of pain. So it's as if the brain knows that you're not going to listen to these upsets, to these feelings, and so for you to maybe listen, it sends out the signal in the form of pain, right? That can be anywhere in the body, but that typically manifests in areas that are more convincing to you. So if you're a runner, it would manifest more in the legs or foot. If you're a climber like me, it would manifest in the shoulder, as it did for me initially, or in the elbow. So it's all different. If you've believed that your back is weak for some reason because your parents had back pain or whatever, it will manifest in your back because that is more convincing to you. So typically the brain finds a pain location that is more convincing or more scary and believable for you. And this is how a lot of mind-body pains start, right? So this leads to the onset. And very often the reason for this onset is that we are not able to feel these unpleasant feelings. So in this video, I thought I'd focus on this onset, on trying to teach you to avoid this onset of pain. There's another element to chronic pain, which is the fact that it tends to persist, to form certain patterns, and there are other reasons why the pain persists, why it becomes chronic. Besides these distressing emotions that we're talking about, there are other reasons which I will address in separate videos. In particular, I'd like you to watch my video about the pain cycle that will come later. But for now, I'm just going to focus on equipping you a little bit more on how to feel these feelings, because if you're anything like me, unless you've had super aware, mentally aware parents or caregivers who were psychologists or trauma experts or whatever, who really taught you how to be with your feelings, including the most upsetting of them, then probably you don't know how to feel your feelings properly. Then probably you are easily triggered, or you are a great repressor of feelings. So there are usually two kinds of people. Those people who are easily upset and triggered because they don't know what to do with these feelings, let's say of rage or sadness, and therefore they either burst into anger one time when things get too much, or they use anger as a cover-up for their sadness, or as there are another set of people who are just not able to feel at all. So it's like there's this category of people who are all over the place with their emotions. They get anxious, they don't know why, or they get suddenly angry, but in reality they're not in touch with deeper feelings of grief or sadness or helplessness, or they would not admit that they're actually angry at themselves. They've turned against themselves. They don't like the way they are, and they don't want to feel these feelings because it would mean that they are vulnerable, that they are not matching up to their ideal. So there's this group of people that, let's say, they're all over the place with their emotions, and then there's this group of people who, I guess it's a kind of worse situation, who are just unable to feel feelings, who have adopted this like steady attitude of kind of trying to go along with things, and if there's anything that reminds them, anything that triggers them, they kind of totally avoid the conversation. They just turn away from the trigger, and they're like, yeah, that doesn't apply to me, that doesn't exist for me. So in whichever group you find yourself, I'm just going to teach you a small process, a short process, which might help you get more in touch with your feelings. As you can see today, I'm in my garden. I like to choose a place that helps me emotionally regulate for these kinds of exercises. It could be a quiet bedroom, that's fine. But it could be also out in nature, and especially if you're in chronic pain, you do need to get out of the house more often as well to emotionally regulate. So just find a quiet place, a place that feels nourishing to you, that an environment that is supportive to you. It's also very important. And I would like you to think of something that makes you angry. That's usually the easiest. It's either something that's made you angry or something that's made you upset. So it could be something that someone said to you recently, or an issue like a problem, being angry with the government or whatever. So just take a few seconds to think of, just choose the first thing that comes to your mind. Anything that you find frustrating, upsetting, okay? And once you have that in your mind, I don't want you to think about like the reasons why you feel upset. I don't want you to use logic right now. I just want you to feel that anger, to look for that emotion in the body. So just, you can picture in your mind the situation. Let's say there's a person who upset you, so you have that person in your mind, however that looks like for you. And I want you to give yourself permission to feel anything, you might be feeling more angry the more you think, the more you envision this person or situation. And I want you to check in with how you feel, especially in the throat, in the chest area. How does that upset feel? How does that anger feel? And allow your body to guide you. Maybe you feel like moving. Maybe you feel like stamping your foot. Just do whatever your body prompts you to do. If there are any sensations, as I said, in the throat, chest area, give those sensations permission to increase. Imagine like you're opening the floodgates right now. There is no controlling these emotions. You're just letting them out, free. And even though they're intense, this is what needs to be done. You're just liberating them, finally. You're giving yourself permission to feel them. It's okay if you feel more upset and more angry. It means it's working, actually. You might also notice that this anger is actually now changing into something else, into sadness maybe. Maybe you're reminded of something else that happened in your past. And you realize that it's not just about this situation that happened last week. It's also what happened before and what happened before to make you respond to it in such a way. You're reminded of other things that have upset you. And let them come on. If anything comes to your mind, anything else that has upset you, any memory, stay with that memory and really feel the emotions associated with that memory. You're not trying to hide anything from anyone right now. You're making peace with the fact that you have these emotions. You've had them probably for a very long time, stored inside of you. It hasn't served you. It's weighed on you. It was very heavy. So now, even if you feel these emotions more intensely, even if maybe you feel like crying, this is what needs to be done. Something's changing, something is moving. And for those of you who are still unable to feel any intense emotion, I want you to focus on that blankness, on that emptiness maybe, whatever that feels like. How does it feel like to feel nothing? To feel empty? For those of you who are feeling emotions, you can guide yourself by asking the same question. How does it feel like to be so angry? To be so weighed down? To feel so upset or so lonely or so isolated, or to realize that you are vulnerable? How does powerlessness feel like? Let it engulf you for a few more minutes. Imagine that there's a wave coming at you right now. This wave of emotion. As we've said before, you've opened the floodgates. Just let the wave go over you. Don't try to fight it. As I personally think about my issues, I feel like drooping down. I feel something in my chest here. I also feel very accepting of how I feel. I'm not at war anymore with how I'm feeling. So although it feels heavy and sad, it also feels kind of peaceful. I'm able to breathe into it. And accept where you are right now. And even if you're frustrated with having chronic symptoms, accept that. Don't be frustrated at yourself for being frustrated as much as possible. Don't be upset with yourself for not being strong enough. It's like you've just realized how things have been affecting you, and you're in this place now with yourself. The wave has gone over you. You're battered, but it's like this calm after the storm. It's a form of surrender that you're looking for. Surrender to whatever emotions you've been feeling. At least that's how I feel right now. It's like I've surrendered to the fact that I feel sad about some things, that I have no power over certain things. Okay, so what we've done today is we've just dipped our toes into what I call, or what many people call, emotional experiencing. We've allowed ourselves to feel whatever came up. And you can do this with anything that triggers you. So let's say you're going through your day and something really triggers you, you're starting to feel anxious or upset. At the end of the day, you can take some time and bring up that image, that feeling, that trigger, and just stay with whatever feelings arise. Just surrender to them and let your intuition guide you. Like, allow anything that pops into your head, any images. Very often you'll get images, or you'll get like certain words in your head, and they will guide you to the next thing and to the next thing. You'll get memories. You get reminded of other instances, other things that happened to you that were upsetting. Feel anything that comes along with that. Just see where it takes you. There's no right or wrong about doing this, for as long as you're not trying to logically make sense of everything and overanalyze everything. Okay? So that's the only kind of wrong thing you can do, that you try to analyze everything. Oh, I feel this way because of all of that, and maybe also because of this. And no, it's more about like, yeah, I have this feeling. How does it feel to be so angry? How does it feel to be so powerless? Then you get an aha moment. Aha, I also felt like that, back then when I was at school. Aha, my mother never recognized, never acknowledged this emotion. It's just a thought, and let the thoughts come without overanalyzing them. So just play around with this, right, in the next weeks, especially if you have chronic pain. And my suggestion would be, do not start with your emotions towards the pain in the beginning. Start with something else that triggers you, something else that you find upsetting in your life. It's just because, as we said, the pain is more of a distraction. It's more of a cry for help because something else is going on. So even though sometimes we think that the pain is the main problem, the only thing that's making us frustrated or sad or unhappy, very often there's something else going on. That's how the unconscious works. So I would suggest that you start with other things from your personal life, other triggers. And that's it, really. I leave it up to you now. Please feel free to share your journey in the comments. And if you like the format of this video, which has been slightly different to my other videos, just let me know. Let me know if you prefer the format of my other videos, as of course I want to make my channel more suitable for what the audience likes. I want to create videos that the audience prefers. So it would be amazing to get your feedback. And that's all from me for today, and I'll see you again next time. Bye bye.